Hello student, today we are going to study about French Revolution. This is the chapter of class 9th SST History chapter 1. So first we study about French society during the late 18th century. In 1774, Louis King XVI of Bourbon family ascended the throne of France. At the age of 20, he married Austrian Princess Maria Antoinette. France's condition during 18th century drained financial resources of France as it helped 13 American colonies gain their independence from the common enemy Britain. The war added debt of more than 2 billion livres. Lenders began to charge 10% interest on loan, which forced French government to spend majority share of the budget on interest payment. State was forced to increase taxes to meet its regular expenses. Now we are going to study about French society, 18th century French society, a society of states. In this, we studied that 18th century French society, a society of states. So in 18th century, French society was divided into states. This was divided into first state, second state, and third state. The first state was the clergy. People who worked in the church are known as clergy. Second state, the nobility, the family members of king. Third state, other than clergy and nobilities, are known as third state people. The society of state was part of the feudal system that dated back to the Middle Age. 90% of population, peasants, about 60% of land owned by nobles, the church, and other rich member of the third state. Clergy and nobility enjoyed certain privileges by birth, exempted from the paying tax. Church to extract its share of tax called tithe from the people. All member of the third state has to pay taxes to the state including tithe. Did you know? Livre, unit of currency in France, discontinued in 1794. Tithe, a state lived by the church, comprised 1/10 of the agricultural produce. Tile, tax to be paid directly to the state. The struggle to survive. France's population increased from about 23 billion in 1715 to 28 billion in 1789, resulting in a rapid increase in demand for food grains. Production did not match the increased demand. This led to be an increase in bread price. Laborers' wages were fixed, but it did not keep pace with the rising price. Gap between the poor and the rich widened. Situation got worse whenever drought or hail reduced the harvest. This led to the subsistence crisis. What is subsistence crisis? Let us see about that. An extreme situation where the basic means of livelihood are in danger. There is a question, how does subsistence crisis happen? Option A is bad harvest lead to scarcity of grains. Option B is hiked by bread price. Option C is lead to weakened bodies, decreases death and food riots. So we had written now that all of these are the causes of subsistence crisis. So the answer D is correct. Now we are going to study about the growing middle class. In 18th century, emergence of middle class earned wealth through overseas trade and manufacturing goods, educated and believed that no No class in society should be privileged by birth. Ideas of society based on freedom and equality laws and opportunities for all became popular. Ideas given by philosophers like John Locke, Rousseau and Montesquieu. Ideas of philosopher John Locke. Two territories of government. This is the book which he had written. Rejected doctrine of the divine and absolute right of the monarch. Ruskin carried the ideas forward, proposing a form of government based on a social contract between people and their representatives. He had written the book Social Contract. Montesquieu, The Spirit of Law, was the book written by him, proposed a division of power within the government between the legislative and the executive and the judiciary. Spread of ideas. Ideas of this philosopher were discussed intensively and spread among people through books and newspapers. News of imposition of further taxes by Louis XVI generated an anger and protest against the system of privileges. Who rejected the doctrine of divine absolute right of monarch? This is the question. We had studied it that the John Locke had rejected the doctrine of this divine and absolute right of monarch. So the option A is correct. Now we have to study about National Assembly. So the National Assembly gained power to make laws elected indirectly by active citizens. A man had to belong to the highest bracket of taxpayer to be voted. Two types of citizen. Active citizen, man above 25 years of ages who paid taxes equal to at least 3 days of a laborer's wage. Passive citizens, remaining men and all women. The Constitution began with a declaration of the right of man and citizen, right to life, freedom of speech, freedom of opinion, equality before law. These rights were established as natural and inalienable rights. They belong to each human being by birth and could not be taken away. According to the 1791 Constitution, the National Assembly was to be directly elected, indirectly elected, appointed by the king, a hereditary body. So we have studied it that the National Assembly is elected indirectly by active citizens. So who are the active citizens? Men above 25 years of ages who paid taxes equal to at least 3 days of the laborer's wage. So the answer of this question is option B, indirectly directly elected. So now we have to study about French abolishes monarchy and become a republic. Louis XVI entered into a secret negotiation with the King of Prussia. Before King could do anything, the National Assembly voted in April 1792 to declare war against Prussia and Austria. People rejected to the reaction to the war. Thousands of volunteers thronged from the provinces to join the army. saw this war as a war of people against king and aristocracy of all over Europe. Patriotic songs were sung which among which Marseille, composed by Roger de Lisle, was sung for the first time by volunteers from the Marseille. Did you know? The Marseille is now the National Assembly of France. The Revolutionary War brought losses and economic difficulty to the people. Political club. The Constitution of 1791 gave political right only to the richer section of society. Political clubs is set for those who wish to discuss government policies and plan their own form of action. Most successful club was Jacobin Club. Women who had been active throughout to form their own club. Jacobin Club belong mainly to the less phosphorus section of society. Members, small shopkeepers, artisans such as shoemakers, pastry cooks, etc. Their leader was Maximilien Robespierre. In 1792, Jacobins planned a rebellion of a large number of Persians. August 10 stormed the palace of the Tholissier, massacred the king's guard, and held the king as hostage. Later, the assembly voted to imprison the royal family. Elections were held. There is one question: which was the most successful political club that wished to continue the revolution in France? Option A, Arthur, Mirabeau. Option C, Jacobin. Option D, Dauphine. So the most successful club was Jacobin clubs. France, a republic. All men of 21 years and above, regarded of wealth, got the right to vote. A newly elected assembly was called the Convention. On 21 September 1792, monarchy abolished and France declared as republic. Louis XVI was sentenced to death by a court on the charge of treason. 21 January 1793 he was executed publicly at the Place de la Concorde. The region of terror period from 1793 to 1794. Maximilien Robespierre. This was the image of Maximilien Robespierre, who was the leader of Jacobins Club. Followed a policy of severe control and punishment. Enemies of the Republic were arrested, imprisoned, and then tried by a revolutionary tribunal. If the court found them guilty, They were guillotined. Did you know? Treason. What is treason? Betrayal of one is country or government. Guillotine. A device consists of two poles and a blade with which a person is beheaded. Named after Dr. Guillotine, who invented it. Robespierre government. Robespierre government. Maximum selling on wages and prices. Meat and bread were rationalized. Use of more expensive white flour was forbidden. All citizens were required to eat the plain line equality bread. All French men and women were henceforth, citoyen and citoyenne citizens. The meaning of citoyen and citoyenne was citizen. A citizen. Churches were shut down and buildings converted into brackets or offices. Robespierre convicted by a court in January 1794, arrested and on the next day sent to be guillotined. So there is a question, on what charge was Louis XVI sentenced to death? So the charge was of treason. So the option is correct. A directory rules in France. Fall of Jacobin government allowed the wealthier middle class to seized power. New constitution was introduced, denied the vote to non-propertial citizens. Two elected legislative councils were established. These then appointed a directory and executive made up of 5 members. Rise of military dictators. Napoleon Bonaparte. Clash between the directors and legislative council led to political instability. This paved the way for the rise of a military dictator, Napoleon Bonaparte. Now we have to study about, did women have a revolution? From the very beginning, women were active participants in revolution. They hoped that their involvement would pressurize the revolutionary government to introduce measures to improve their lives. Third state women condition: no education and no job trainings. Had to work for a living, work as laundress, domestic servant, etc. Only daughters of nobles or wealthier members could study at a convent. Women Political Club. Objective: to discuss and voice their interest. About 60 women's clubs came up in different French cities. Most famous club, the Society of Revolutionary and Republican women demand equal political rights. Women disappointed that the Constitution of 1791 reduced them to passive citizens. Creation of state schools. Schooling was made compulsory to all girls. Forced marriage was abolished. Marriage was made a contact register under civil law. Divorce was made legal. Both men and women can apply. Job training. Women became artisan or run small businesses. Reign of terror and women. A government issues law ordering closure of women's club. Political activity is banned. Many prominent women were arrested. Most of them were executed. Movement of voting rights and equal wage. The fight of women's suffrage continued for 200 years, carried out through an international suffrage movement during 19th and early 20th century. Finally, in 1946, that women in France won the right to vote. Abolition of slavery. Slave trade. Slave trade. Colonies in the Caribbean, Guadeloupe, and San Domingo were important suppliers of commodities such as tobacco, indigo, sugar, and coffees. Europeans were reluctant to go and work at such a distance. This meant a shortage of laborers on the plantation. Triangular slave trade. Europe, France, America. Slave trade began in the 17th century from the port of Brodesque and Nantes to the African coast. Branded and shackled, slaves were packed tightly into ships for 3 months long voyage, sold to plantation owner. Exploitation of slave labor made it possible to meet the growing demand in European market. End of slavery. Jacobin regime in 1794 convention freed all slaves in the French overseas possession. 10 years later, Napoleon reintroduced slavery. Finally, in 1848, slavery abolished in French colonies. Now we have to study about the revolution and everyday life. Change in lives of people. In 1789, idea of liberty and equality practiced in everyday life. Censorship abolished. Freedom of speech and expression proclaimed as a natural right by Declaration of Right of Man and Citizen. Freedom of the press. Opposing view or event could be expressed. Playing songs and festive procession attract large number of people. Now we are going to take a overview of the whole French Revolution. So first in 1774, Louis XVI became king of France. In 1789 Convention of State General, Third State formed National Assembly. In 1791 Constitution is framed. In 1792 to 1793 French become a republic. The king is beheaded. Reign of terror in 1793 to 1794. Napoleon defeated at Waterloo in 1815. Women got voting rights in France in 1946. Napoleon became Emperor of France in 1804. In 1848, abolition of slavery. So now the chapter is finished. Do practice of all questions and thank you.